Yeah, the Lord's been good to me. Of course, I've been practicing now. I want to tell you, there was a while I couldn't sing a verse of a song, and I was a little disturbed about it. I'm reminded of a little boy named Peter. Finally got hold of his driver's license. In 15, you get your learner's license, I think. But in order to celebrate the special day, the whole family went out the driveway, got an automobile, and decided they would ride along with him. And the daddy got in the back seat right behind where the little boy was driving. And when he saw his dad, he said, "Dad," he said, "you must be fed up with the front seat riding in it all the time." And Dad said, "Nope, I'm not really fed up with it." He said, "I'm sitting back here to where I can kick the back of your seat every time we're riding, or all the time we're riding." So I guess that's what his son did. All right. What if I could tell you that there was a way to guarantee that your children, now we as parents here today, our children are already grown, but if we could tell the parents of younger children, if we could tell them that it would be 5 times less likely to commit suicide, 32 times less likely to run away, 20 times less likely to have behavior disorders, 14 times less likely to commit rape, 9 times less likely to drop out of school, 10 times less likely to abuse chemical abuses, drugs, and so forth, and 9 times less likely to end up in state-operated institutions. Now, if I could tell you your children would turn out that way, especially those who are not here that will be listening to this message later on, would you be interested in finding out the secret for these things to go on in the home? Well, here is the secret. And here's the problem that faces, sadly, probably 30 or 40% of the homes in America today. That is the absence or the presence of the fathers in the homes. Many homes are single home dwellings. In other words, the wife is taking care of the kids and there's no father available. Many of the other homes that we've mentioned in that percentage, the fathers are there, but they're not present. Or they might be present in body, but they're not present as a father should be. Therein lies the problem facing our younger generation. Now, we can be down on the younger generation and say, boy, our kids today are in bad shape. But in actuality, they're replicas of what the home is. If the presence of fathers is missing, and only the mother has the responsibility to train those children, and if that mother's not a Christian and don't have those children in church, then therein lies a great problem. We see all the riots and the protests. Now, I agree with the peaceful protest. There's nothing wrong with it. That's the First Amendment right for somebody to protest peacefully. But when you start destroying property and killing people, and especially policemen, and then setting fires to property and so forth, where did it all come from? Well, it's sad to say, many of those who are out on the streets today are children of those people that protested during the Vietnam War. Y'all remember the riots and the protests that we had during that time? 1 Thessalonians 2 says, just as you know how we were exhorting and encouraging and imploring each other of you as a father would his own children. Now, the presence of the father in the home makes a tremendous difference in a child's future. Y'all agree with that? According to Gallup poll, and I don't go along with polls so much, but Gallup's pretty good, says 40% of men between the ages 18 to 49 feel that their father was their greatest parental influence compared to just 23% of men over 50. Simply defined. A father, now listen to this, I don't want to get politically correct, but I just don't really care about political correctness. A father is a male parent. Y'all got that? A male parent. Not two male parents, or not two female parents, but a father is a male parent. Adam was a male. Why do we call God the Father? Because it's masculine in gender. Our Savior was masculine. He was a man. And biblically defined. But the Father's much more. When we take the Bible in our hands, we're actually looking at a user's manual as a guide. We all have user's manuals when we build or put together furniture or some kind of, especially children's toys. Have y'all ever noticed how a children's toy now is packaged together? I mean, you got to take a knife or a pair of scissors, and you got to cut all those cords that have it together. By the time you get everything in the toy out, you're exasperated and you say, what have I got to do now? And I'm not good at reading manual instructions or on how. I look at the picture and say, this is how it's supposed to go. Then I wind up with 10 notes and nuts and bolts that's left over. And where is this? And Vera says, you should have read the instructions. No wonder it's falling apart. All right. But the story in the Scriptures reveals our Heavenly Father's love for His Son and for us. And it shares the account and examples that we will either want to imitate or avoid. And in the Bible, we see both good fathers and, yes, we see some bad fathers. And in our world today, we have good fathers and we have bad fathers. And that influence rolls over into our children. Now, the message is clear in the presence of a father in the home. It makes a positive difference in a child's life. I know it made a difference in my life. And I'll just share this. I became friends with my father after I left home. You know why? Now, my father was a strong disciplinarian. I hated for him to spank me. If I disobeyed him, especially if I smoked around the corner, I didn't smoke much because the first time was enough. But I knew that he loved me, and he didn't have to show it so much because I knew in my heart that my dad loved me. But my dad loved me to a point that he made sure that we went to church. He made sure that we were taught. Every morning before we ate breakfast, ham or eggs or sausage, biscuit. No cereal. We didn't know what cereal was back then. In the Baptist church, they had what they call the Home Life magazine. And before we ate, we'd sit there looking at all that delicious food as children, and they opened that Home Life magazine and had a devotional. And God help us if He called on Grandma to pray. But you see, a father has a positive influence in our lives. And my dad had a positive influence in my life. And like I say, when I left, I thought when I was at home, I knew more than him. And I realized when I left home, he really was a man of wisdom. And as I would come back home to visit, we would sit down and we'd have chats. And all the last several years of his life, me and him became very dear friends. A friendship that was bound with this that we did not have when I was coming up as a teenager. But I knew my dad loved me. Now, the Bible assumes the positive influence of the Father. Jesus taught us to refer to God as our Father, who art in heaven, as we prayed that prayer. God is our Father, and He is in heaven. And by Jesus' question, Matthew 7:9, we see that they assume that the Father will always have a child's best interest at heart. I am familiar in my own life with people that I know. I know of some young fathers that could care less about their children. Now, it's sad when you, and I do this during the mealtime that Vera, or lately the daughters have been preparing the meals for Vera for the kids, and I sat down in the daycare and I have this name game. Who's your dad? Who's your father? Who's your mother? Where do you live? What do you do if there's a fire in the house and nobody else is there, and all of a sudden, who do you call? What do you do if you're out in the yard and if a stranger rides up and says, little boy or girl, come and I'll give you a quarter or some candy? I tell them what to do. Here's the sad part. I go around and ask, who's your father? And we got one little boy in that daycare so confused, don't know who his father is. Today he names one person who is his actual biological father. And the next day I ask the same question, he tells me another name. But I know the situation, because the person that's in that young boy's life now has become the father figure. Isn't that a sad situation? Don't know where his real father is. So all of a sudden this new man that has come into their life has become that figure, and he's become his father. Why? Because children have that instinct. They look up to the male figure as being their fathers. Now, you want to know what they call me? I walk through Walmart, haven't seen kids in ages, don't know who they are because they're grown. Papa Wayne! I said, well, now, you got to refresh my memory. Who are you? And then they tell me who they are, and I said, my Lord, how you've grown, how you've changed. Because I hadn't not seen them in all the years. But it makes me feel good they call me Papa Wayne. Especially after they've gone to school and in college. Papa Wayne. Even the parents call me that. But anyway. Then, God asked the question, what man is there among you when his son shall ask him for a loaf, or Jesus did this, and you'll give him a stone? In the Scriptures, throughout the Scriptures, Paul was looking for an analogy to compare his work, and to the analogy he chose was his father-child relationship, and he used 3 words to describe the father's role. And I know I'm not dealing with Job, because you see, Job was a model parent. He was a man of faith. I'll go on and interject that with Job. Even though he was the richest man in the world, he eschewed evil and he loved his children. And when he lost those 10 children, I mean, that had to be devastating. The most devastating thing in the world, I understand, is to lose a child. And Job lost 10. And in the Scriptures, there's 3 words to describe the father's role: exhorting, advise earnestly; encouraging, give hope or confidence to stimulate; and imploring, request earnestly. All 3 of these words imply an intensity, and of course the advice is we motivate, we give instruction, And we do all these things with intensity because we know their importance as a father. That's how important it is. And then I want to close with this. In Ephesians, it says, fathers, do not provoke, in one translation, exasperate. Provoke your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. There are two commands in this text. One is negative, and the other is positive. On the negative side, we're not to provoke our children to anger. In other words, our discipline cannot crush their spirit or demean them. It's a thin line that most of us have crossed. It's a difference between encouragement and discouragement. Two thoughts. Live so that your children, when people tell them that they remind them of you, will stick out in their chest and not in their tongues. Does that make sense? And then your family is the only one of your possessions that you can take to heaven. You ever thought about that? Your family. And that's why it's so important that our homes come together in our nation. And I've always said this, and I say this again. The home was the first institution God created. Adam and Eve. If the home goes right, and if the home is right, and this is how it is within our America, good old America, if the home is right, then the school will be right. God bless our teachers that teach our children. If the home is right, naturally the church will be right. If the home is right, Washington, D.C. will be right. You understand what I'm saying? So where's the breakdown? The breakdown today in our society is not the school necessarily, not the church necessarily, not the government necessarily, but it's H-O-M-E, home. And that's the most important institution on the face of God-given earth. Home. You ever heard the song or the statement, home is where the heart is? Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word. Y'all remember that song? Home, home on the range. Turn your eyes upon Jesus, if we will, this morning. Bob?
Page 349, please. Turn your eyes upon Jesus and roll it as we can sing.
Thank you for joining us for this message from Reverend Wayne McDonald. We would like to take this time to invite you to learn more about our churches by visiting us at calvarycharge.com or by following us on Facebook at Calvary Bethel Centennial. Remember that we are alive together in worship. As Ephesians 2:4-5 says, "But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved."